Welcome back to Efficio's Transforming Public Procurement Micro Series, where we're continuing to help you get up to speed with the new Procurement Act legislation. We are 3 weeks into the new act, and today I'm joined by Joe Gross, one of our leaders in Efficio's public sector practice, with a special two-parter to reflect on the new regulations and the changes we're about to see. Welcome, Joe. So, how are you feeling?
I'm glad we're here and excited for the future. It's been a long journey. Starting back in 2016 with the referendum, this allowed us to rethink our procurement regulations. On to December 2020 with a green paper, then May 2022 with 9 sittings in the Commons to debate this, finally receiving royal assent in October 23. After a bit of a false start in October last year, we are now live. So really looking forward to getting this into practice.
Absolutely. It's definitely been a long journey. And still, on the last day, on the final days before the old regulations close, there was a clear scramble to finalize contracts under familiar rules. Data shows that over 800 contract notices were published in the last week alone, a clear sign that organizations were keen to lock in contracts before the new framework introduced unfamiliar requirements. This flurry of activity goes to show the sector's desire to maintain the comfort of established processes. And while understandable, it also underscored the need for greater confidence in navigating the new Procurement Act. Joe, how would you summarize what people are saying about the new Act?
A couple of key points for me here. We'll talk about language, transparency, procedures, and of course, debarment. Procurement Act brings in a whole host of new terminology that's going to take time to embed. I constantly find myself talking about contract notices and PINs. The old habits are going to die hard, so you're just going to have to bear with us for a while. Secondly, there's a lot of focus on transparency. The Act demands greater transparency to drive fairness and accountability. Some of these changes are really logical and make sense. For me, moving transparency notices before direct awards and amendments before enacting the change make a lot of sense. You're giving information rather than begging for forgiveness. So I think these are really positive changes. I think there's a bit of a myth to bust around some of the authority-wide notices, so payment compliance notices. I don't think these are going to be as big a challenge as many people think, because I think with a bit of investment, a little bit of technology, these are going to be really manageable and authorities are going to get really, really slick at them.
Absolutely, I agree. I think the real pain point is going to be contract details notices and performance notices. These notices will demand deeper insights into contract performance, and they aim to hold suppliers accountable for meeting KPIs. But that also means the contract managers will have a little bit more burden. But I don't think people talk enough about the benefits to contracting authorities. I think having awareness of what everyone else is doing can only be advantageous. Firstly, can you imagine having better visibility of what frameworks are available? That's going to be a game changer. And also thinking about potential collaboration and consideration instead of flooding the market with the same tenders. It's an ambition I think we're all going to share.
And supplier performance is the other side of transparency here. Allowing for exclusion based on poor past performance is a question we often get asked. And through this regime, there are clearer obligations to manage this. There is, however, a bit of a quid pro quo around this. So authorities will need to robustly manage contracts, publishing contract performance notices, celebrating good performance, but also publicizing where we have underperformance. In return, you'll then be able to rely on that information to hold suppliers to account in the future tenders. Ultimately, I think transparency is a plus side, and it's really been a catalyst and enabler, forcing contracting authorities to modernize, invest, and innovate, which again can only be a positive.
Definitely. Thank you, Joe. It's really great to hear your reflections. Please tune in next week for part 2 of this reflection series, where we'll dive further into 2 of the biggest changes brought by the new Act, the competitive flexible procedure and the debarment regime. I hope you enjoyed today's microcast. Please do post any thoughts or questions in the chat. And get in touch with Joe or myself for any future topics you might want to hear about. We'll see you next week.